Hi, my name is Dr. Maurice Duffy, and today I'm going to be speaking to a person I've admired on Twitter for ages. And I'm so delighted to finally get a chance to talk to Dr. Jennifer Cassidy. But before I start, for those of you who are new or don't know me, I'm an executive coach, I'm a change agent and a motivational speaker. For the past 20 odd years, I've coached and presented to literally thousands of business people, to politicians and to sports people on performance, on change, on business and personal strategies, on leadership, and basically how to be the person they want to be. In the business world, I've worked in over 40 countries with business people looking for help on becoming a better leader, building better teams, or building better businesses. I've also worked in sport and probably am best known through some of the work that I've done in sport with Olympic champions, international golfers, premiership footballers, international sports teams such as the Australian cricket team, professional clubs, or even politicians in Westminster and Washington. A lot of the client work I do is individual or team focused, and I'm a mental conditioning coach at a number of high performing clubs. And I do a lot of work in the NHS and with many blue chip companies. You can find out more about me at www.mauriceduffy.com, or if Twitter is your thing, at the Big Squawks, or just message me or send me an email at letstalkmauriceduffy.com. Now, the podcasts I do are with people I admire, and I think you can learn from, and I certainly learn from them. And you can find out more about that on my website, on some of the people I have spoken to so far. But today, we've got Dr. Jennifer Cassidy, a person I have admired for ages, and I love her Twitter account at Oxford Diplomat. She's Irish, so of course I'm going to like her. She's a lecturer at Oxford. She's a past diplomat. She's a TED speaker. She's written a fantastic book on gender and diplomacy. And of course, she's best known, well, maybe not best known, but certainly known at Oxford Diplomat. So let's kind of start the podcast and look at the interview and listen to the interview that I've done. Dr. Maurice Duffy, and I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm delighted to be talking to Dr. Jennifer Cassidy. I've followed Oxford Diplomat on Twitter for ages, and I love her cutting comments. I love her insights on politics. Obviously, I love her reflections on Ireland and what happens there, and then of course the appreciation of the violin whenever she kind of does the little diddly diddly, which is more than diddly diddly. It's a little bit sophisticated than that on Twitter itself. So Jennifer, how are you?
Fine, thank you, and thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Not at all, not at all. As I said, well, one of my heroes on Twitter is you kind of capture what I think many times. So what would be useful is to kind of find out a little bit about you. So where are you from? You know, how did you find yourself where you are right now?
So yeah, a bit of background. Please feel free to interrupt me if I'm, it all started in 1852. Like, I won't go that far, but so please feel free to interrupt. So I initially, talking about violin, was started my degree in violin, and I had no intention ever of doing anything in academia. I never won one academic prize in school, even though 2 years ago I was invited to be the keynote speaker to give out the academic prizes at prize night. And I did tell everyone in the room, including the parents, I'm like, I just have to note that during my 6 years of this school, I never once won an academic prize. And then the room started laughing, and I was like, and it's not like I came second and this speech is going to be one about the unspoken joys of coming second. I was like, I came nowhere near them. But it was just really to tell people, where you are now doesn't determine, where you're going to end up. But I had a back injury from violin.
How can you get a back injury from violin?
That's what everyone says. Like, you've a back injury from music. Still to this day, I have to go to once a week. I have it is quite literally the bane of my life.
And I'm smiling about it as well. I'm sorry, right?
Yeah, no worries. But well, for example, in the Irish Orchestra, which meets twice a year, and I did that from when I was 12 to 21. Once at Christmas for 3 weeks, and then in the summer for maybe like 7 weeks, and then we travel abroad and do concerts, but we would practice 10 to 12 hours a day. And let alone would you practice 10 to 12 hours a day, you would have to know the music before you even got to the event itself. And so just the constant movement of the arm, it is like tendonitis, and just practicing for that long for so many hours would certainly do it to you. And so the advice was, you'll make it through a degree, but a professional career would see you in a lot of pain. So I chose writing at a desk, which didn't, wasn't the best choice as well. But however, then I decided, what is the subject I liked the most in school? History. It was the subject I liked the most, and I thought politics might be a good complement to that. I didn't know anything really about politics at the age of 18. My family are not political. I was very green going into it. But turns out that I didn't like studying history as an academic subject. I still love history, but not as an academic discipline. But the politics and some lecturers, particularly Dr. Jacqueline Hayden, were just so inspiring and so encouraging. And my love for just current affairs and everything going on really drove me there. And from there, I never thought I would ever do a master's. And then I just decided, okay, I'm gonna apply. And so I applied to do a master's, and I got accepted here in Oxford for the MSc in Global Governance and Diplomacy, which is the course I now lecture on, which is strange to think about, when I thought I would never even get in, and now I'm lecturing on it. And then I loudly proclaimed to my department that I would never do a PhD. I was like, bye guys, it's been fun. Like, a PhD is not for me. And then I worked for Ireland's. I thankfully got a job immediately after. I worked for Ireland's mission to the UN in New York. And then after that, I worked for the EU Diplomatic Service to the Kingdom of Cambodia, working primarily on the Khmer Rouge tribunals and other human rights issues in the region. And then came back to headquarters when Ireland had the chairmanship of the OSCE for 2012 and presidency of the Council of the European Union for 2013. And then after that, I decided, I think digital diplomacy is going to become a thing. And I think I want to be part of that. So I went back to my same department and I was like, hi, it's me, the person who said they'd never do a PhD. Please accept me. And thankfully they did. And yes, I did the PhD. And I wrote a book on women in diplomacy alongside the PhD, and then have been lecturing here in Oxford for, since then.
And there are a number of highlights that you've just kind of rambled through there, right? So working for the UN, working in the EU, but there's one obviously that jumps out as like, in Cambodia and working on the tribunals, and that must have been traumatic.
Yes, certainly. So I'd spend 2 to 3 days a week at the Khmer Rouge tribunals, because the EU funds the tribunals, and the tribunals are a hybrid tribunal between the UN and Cambodia. Speaking in a personal capacity, even though I did write a number of reports to Brussels on this, they're so badly run that I couldn't see how this was creating justice, or judges were being bribed. There were so many stories of judges having to leave the two legal systems, of the Cambodian legal systems and the UN systems. They were not working in unison. However, the French ambassador had a great conversation with me, and he really changed my mind on it. And he said, look, yes, it is not doing this amazing job of because it's trying 5 people one at a time, not in a group, and they're all over 80. And so he's like, yes, it's not doing exactly what we would like to do, but look at everyone in that room. So every day there was free buses from Phnom Penh to take anyone who wanted to go to the tribunals. And the tribunals were absolutely packed every single day. And so, somewhat akin to the truth and reconciliation process in South Africa, it was an outlet for the people. It was something. So, he really did, like, that was just me learning, about diplomacy. And I was so fortunate to, have great ambassadors, like that. He said, some things might look on the outside, they mightn't look like they deserve funding or what we see as workable, but actually they're serving a different purpose. So
and that emotional release and that feeling, of some closure, is so important,
exactly.
I totally get that, and there's so much there in your history that I'd love to delve into. So, the masters and lecturing at Oxford. So what's it like as an Irish person lecturing at Oxford?
Well, lecturing, I finished my PhD in at the end of May. It was in May 2017, and I got a lectureship in June, which I was so fortunate to get. And so that was teaching at St. Peter's College on politics, philosophy, and economics, that PPE course, which the Financial Times, I believe, wrote the article saying the course that ruined the nation. And I'm like, they do have a number of fair points, I have to say, in it. However, there are, for example, in that cohort of the 3 years I was doing it, there were students like Malala was there. So I was like, it does draw, there are shining lights in it. But, being Irish during that time, because it was all during the Brexit negotiations, and teaching European politics as well, and having a voice online. Yeah, it was not that difficult, because I do connect with the students very well, and the tutorials, and I am quite an extreme marker, so I spend so much time marking, so they know that their work, like, that I value and respect their time and their work. So there was a lot of mutual respect there. But yeah, I think some people, I had to openly always say to people, you can disagree with what I like, just because we all know I disagree with Brexit. If you have a valid argument for Brexit, which is not based on propaganda, please, express it and tell it. Like, I don't want to just develop a cohort of people who are all just thinking like me. All I ask for you to do is to do the argument. Yeah. So to put them at ease like that was something which took time, because of course students want to, like I myself back in the day, want to impress, lecturers, and I was like, once there's no like disinformation and propaganda, and you've a good argument, like, who am I to judge your work?
You're talking to the converted here, because you could never put a good argument to me for Brexit, but that's a conversation that we could have, because I can never find a good argument. And what I'm interested in asking you and just exploring with you for a couple of minutes is, your view on politics right now. We're talking, and we're in the UK on English politics, or on American politics, which seem to kind of rule the world, right? So
yeah.
whereas as a student, as a teacher, as an educator, as a an individual who has had a lot of experience working in some of these areas. What is your view?
Well, I hate to use the word fascinated, but I will use it. I'm fascinated and hooked at the moment on US politics. The first thing I do every single morning is go on YouTube. I watch Rachel Maddow, who actually she did her PhD at Lincoln College, and that's the reason I chose the college. I watch just an array of analysis shows on US politics. You know, in some sense, I can't believe what I'm seeing, but I'm also think really this is the only way I saw the Trump presidency ending. You know, I never saw him quietly leaving. I never saw, this is probably the most Trumpian way to exit a presidency there is. But I had given a lecture to UCD actually last week on a post-Trump, a Biden presidency, what next? And my question that I put to the audience, and one I put to myself and to anyone listening, is, should there be an age of, should Biden engage in an age of forgetting, which the US has historically done, for example, with Obama not investigating war crimes, other presidents pardoning ex-presidents, or should there be an age of reckoning? Because this is an event like no other, and I think this call for unity, which we all know is just an inaugural staple, I think there needs to be an age of reckoning. I think there needs to be some kind of truth and reconciliation process. And the media has so much to answer for. And just listening to these people talk about how the election was stolen, the passion, like the true belief they have, it is shocking. And one of the quotes that I always come back to, apologies about how I'm going to pronounce her second name, I always butcher it, Hannah Arendt, or Arendt, for people if I've messed it up. But the quote is, and she wrote, she's my favorite, like, if not the top political philosopher that I go to. But she, for clarification for people listening, she escaped Nazi Germany, went to the US, and she wrote about fascism in Europe in the 1920s and 30s. But her work today is so unbelievably relevant. And the quote is, the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced communist or the ardent Nazi, but the person for whom fact and fiction and truth and falsehood no longer exist. And I think that is just so powerful. If you have the ability to create two realities, because these people truly believe this, essentially, you have what we have seen.
and the US is it's the diversity of it is huge. And I was surprised, and I wasn't surprised by what actually happened, because having worked in and traveled in many of the big cities, and then gone into Midwest and mid US, and looking at the diversity of views, of education, of worldliness, of travel, of all of those things. And when you explore that, what you have is kind of behaviorally and within individuals a very different perspective of what the world is and what the role of the US is in that world. And I think that Biden's challenge is going to be how you play both of those sides off. because whenever you engage with one, you're going to basically piss off the other ones.
Yeah.
And how we travel forward is going to be interesting. And I've never really explored that view, and it's an interesting one, because US is about forgiveness. It's just wipe the history and move on. And whether there should be that reconciliation or whether there should be those reviews, it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, I personally believe there should be an age of reckoning, certainly because I think we can all agree that Biden will be a one-term president. I don't think he's going to run again. So with that, he does have the luxury to go first. He doesn't need to take it slow in order to get reelected. But every country, and I rarely compare Trump and Brexit. I actually think they're very separate things. However, in this context, I do compare them. Unlike most countries, the majority of which I'm talking about here, which have been colonized, all of which ended when they gained their freedom. Look at us in the Republic. It took 24 hours. We were in a civil war. For example, in Africa, the only country that didn't have a civil war post colonization was Cape Verde, and those civil wars were based on people's idea of what their country wanted to, their view of the country and what they wanted to go forward. But the US and the UK have never had that, because they've always dominated the globe. So if we see Remainers, Leavers, it's about their view of their country, where they fit in the world and where they want to go forward. And it's the same with Biden, and the same with Trump. When they say this is our country, it's like, what are you talking about? This is not just your country, but it's with the way I interpret it, they truly mean, this is our interpretation, this is how we want. And those two countries haven't had that kind of age of reckoning, and they need it, because
and that's kind of a very interesting view, because you go to the other side, then you'll say that in Russia, what they're terrified of is a revolution, right? So they're completely the opposite. So the only thing that they worry about, they don't worry about the US or the UK or the EU or anybody's perception of them. The only thing that they worry about is the perception of their own people, because they have a habit of having a revolution. But I could stay talking on this topic for a long time, so I'm going to put it along, because in the interest of your time. So kind of just give us a little insight. So we've seen Oxford Diplomat, we've seen you on Twitter. There's the music in you, there's the government part of you, right? There's the lecture, there's the politics in you. So so as a young person in comparison to me, and a very young person in comparison to me, you've traveled quite a lot. So let me kind of just delve into your personality for a little bit. So who's the person in history you most admire, and why?
Oh wow, that's a broad.
Well, there's got to be one that comes to mind.
Living or
your choice. I'm just curious, what would be the words? Because what are the words?
Mary Robinson.
Oh, Mary Robinson. Now there's an interesting one. Irish president, right? Irish senator, Irish ambassador, Irish icon, everything. But I don't know what else you would say about her. So why is it Mary Robinson?
She came into power at an age when I was just beginning to realize what power was, or what leadership was. I didn't even realize the significance of her election, but it obviously stuck with me and stayed with me. And just her, her passion and enduring sense of duty to the causes that she represents, and in my opinion, she does it so humbly. And it's a very personal choice for me, that it's someone that I saw, as I said, my family is not political, like outer family is not political or anything of the sort. And so to see that really started things, I think, working in my head.
Brilliant. And what's your favorite piece of music? What piece of music do you tend to go to?
Oh, so playing wise or listening?
When you're looking for that moment when Jennifer just wants to be Jennifer, what is it that you would tend to go to?
Oh God, my music taste, aside from the classical, is pretty pretty embarrassing. It's like one of those things where, if you're at a party, someone's like, "Can I listen to your Spotify?" You're like, "No, no, don't listen to that. Like, you don't want to hear what I listen to." Very just top kind of top charts music. But regarding my own Foy Vance, actually, from Northern Ireland. My brother got me, if I could ever see him live, oh, his voice is just phenomenal. Coldplay, I'm obsessed with, and Lennon Stella, this US artist. And regarding playing and music, anything Dvorak and Beethoven is.
Wow. Well, I've kind of, I can't match that, but the thing that's really fascinated me recently, especially through lockdown, because it brought back so many memories, is the kind of fixation with shanty music right now.
Yeah.
And this is just Irish pub music. This is what I was
Yeah.
kind of born and raised with. And it's really funny. I've been writing some shanty music, but anyway, we won't delve into that. But it was an interesting one. So, how have you found lockdown?
Tough, I have to say. I had COVID myself nearly a year ago, actually. Today, for St. Bridget's Day, I went to the Irish Embassy in Rome for the week after. There was an event on women in diplomacy, and I was on a panel with a number of female ambassadors, and I'm pretty sure I got it there. This was before even Italy had declared an emergency. And I came back. Thankfully, I did not spread it to any of my students. I'm so grateful for that. But I was hospitalized for it, and thankfully, no long-lasting symptoms whatsoever. But the lockdown has been tough because I live alone, and I'm assistant dean at one of the colleges. So we're on duty maybe 2 or 3 nights a week for some students who are still remaining. And if there's anyone who gets a test, we're immediately alerted, and then we follow up with them and make sure everyone is isolating. And while I do acknowledge that I have like everything I need, I have a park on my doorstep and internet and all these things, I do think it's okay to also say, what, it's kind of tough, and I'd like to be with my family, and my dog in Dublin. But it's a necessary evil, so to speak. It is what it is. But yeah, I have found it tough, particularly this one. I think this is
the last one. And what would you say you've learned about yourself through lockdown?
I feel like the PhD taught me a lot about lockdown. We have the support bubbles here, and my support bubble is my friend Dr. Chloe Lewis, and she did the PhD with me. We had our desks beside each other. We were like, wow, that really prepared us for the lockdown, like the solitude. What have I learned about? I don't think I've learned too much about myself. That's awful to say. I've got into jigsawing, if that's a thing. Yeah, I got quite obsessed with it. I'd never done jigsaw, I think, in like 20 years. And then over Christmas, when I was in Dublin over Christmas, I made around 4, and I would be there for like 6 hours. I'm like, this is not normal. So yeah, doing that. But it's also just given me a lot of time to think about what I want moving forward. And like as I've said previously about the different kind of milestones in the career, if I can call it that, where to next. Academia is changing, thankfully. People are slow, I think, on the change. But regarding the public outreach and even, interviews like this and discussions like this, I think this is the way forward, which I'm very grateful for. But I don't know if it's going to move as fast as I want it to move. So yeah, it's just giving me a lot of time to think and reflect, because I will never make a decision. That's one thing about me, until I have thought and rethought about it. So,
and as somebody who teaches elite sportsmen, when people ask me what do I teach them, and I teach them not to think. That's a kind of critical thing that I want them to do, is not to think, right? Which is kind of one of the hardest things in the world to do. So, if you take, somebody like a Steve Smith and you ask him the question, and he'll tell you 2 things about me. One is he'll refer to the phrase that I always tell him is dig in. Dig in.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of one. And 2 is stop thinking. Right?
Stop
thinking. I don't want you. When you're out there for 8 hours, I don't want one thought in your head. Right. But we could move on into that topic for a long time. So you shared with me what the future would be. I'm not going to share it here, obviously.
Yeah.
It is exciting and it is impactful, and I have no doubt that you will achieve it. You are
I hope so.
A fascinating individual. If anybody wants to understand politics or to get an insight in politics, I suggest that they follow you on
thank you so much.
No, I would suggest that, because that's hugely insightful. I think that you have traveled a long way. I thank you for your time today.
I thank you for having me.
Really, really useful. As I said, I've admired you for quite a while. So, I wish you every success. I hope lockdown goes well. Please keep sending out those violins. I love them. I can't play a musical instrument. I have not one. My kids, if my kids were listening, they would say, this is so true. He is not musical. Even though every child I have is hugely musical, right? Hugely musical. So I go, how did I get that so wrong, right? So I obviously passed everything on to them. But thank you for your time. Wish you every success to the future. And Dr. Jennifer Cassidy, find her at Diplomat. Thank you.
If you're interested in change, mindset, and personal development, whether in your personal life or career, you can head over to mauriestuffy.com/resources, where you'll be able to access loads of inspirational material, articles, podcasts, and motivational thoughts, as well as meditation and visualization exercises. You can also get in touch with Dr. Maurice Duffy and his team by email on letstalk@mauriestuffy.com. And don't forget to follow him on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Simply search for @TheBeak Squawks.